Any tips on stopping arguments around estimation? This is a question put out, and there's some context here, but I want to answer it in a way whereby it can be useful across different scenarios. So for example, estimation drama with a scrum team, between scrum masters, between agile coaches. That never happens, does it? Estimation is a real hot topic, and some people talk about no estimation, but for the context of this conversation, I want to talk about something that I've used, a metaphor that can really help conversations move along when teams get stuck with some estimation beef. Now, the good thing about this is that it doesn't matter if you're using time, points, or some other sort of relative estimation abstraction. Little disclaimer, this is not about trying to stop teams from having a dialogue, a debate, and even an argument. Teams need to have that conversation to create a shared understanding of what it's going to take to move work from to do to done. If they're going through, different parts of the Tuckman cycle, not in a linear way, but in a way whereby it's got to come back round, you don't just storm and get over storming, it can happen again and again, then you've got to have it out in a useful way, have it out. So this is not to say that by just injecting this tip in, all your problems are solved. You want to have a good dialogue, and sometimes that involves difficult conversations. So by no means use this as a way to nullify healthy conversation and make it some sort of clinical transactional process and say, no more conversation now around estimation. This is what we've got to use. It's not that, it's just an idea that you can consider. Context, let's try the sprint planning meeting. Somebody pulls up a card, everyone's discussed the card, and an estimate goes in. It could be time, points, whatever, relative measures in t-shirts, who knows. It doesn't take that long. It doesn't take that long to you. Oh, it's not that hard to do. Oh, but it is hard, just not in a way that you understand. These are common sound bites and healthy sounds that are coming out of discussion on estimation. Now, if this carries on and they can't get to a point whereby they can agree, or they do agree and people are, visibly disgruntled and it's not working, one of the things I like to do is ask and say, can I try something to help the conversation? If I get that permission, I'll probably start scribbling on a whiteboard or some sort of electronic board, depending whether it's remote or physical, and I'll introduce a metaphor. The reason I introduce a metaphor is because it may be an intense discussion, or I want to come away from the specific type of work just to get people's creative minds thinking and to make it a bit more playful so people open up to a conversation. Now, before I get into the metaphor, what I may do is I may say, draw to do and done, and I'll just create an empty card. And I'll ask and I'll say, well, essentially what we're trying to talk about here is what's it going to take to move a card from to do to done? So I want to cut away from the noise. I want to go back to basics. And most of the time, that's a reasonable statement to make. How do we take this piece of work, this task, this thing from to do to done? That's what we're trying to talk about. What's it going to take, right? But here's one of the metaphors I use. Me and Bob, who's a developer in the room, we are handymen. And we're going to go out today, and the work we're going to do, there are two cards on our board, two tasks. One is to do with rewiring of somebody's house, and the other is to do with gardening work for that same house. Two different types of work, right? And so the cards move from to do to done, and we both start at 9 o'clock in the morning and both finish at 5 o'clock. And I'll be playful asking questions around things like, are they both exerting effort? The likelihood is they'll say yes, and we may look up the definition of the word effort to get a shared understanding. That's reasonable, it's effort. Are we saying that they're both exerting the same type of effort? Then the conversation becomes a bit more nuanced, because what I'm trying to introduce here is clarity on different types of effort. I'll ask, what types of effort are involved in, say, rewiring and gardening? And what you'll hear are things like, gardening work could be more heavy lifting, more elbow grease, more arduous, more physical in that respect, okay? Still takes the time from 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock to do it, but that's the type of effort it takes. Okay, how about the rewiring? Maybe it's more analytical, maybe it's more cerebral, maybe it's more deeper thinking. Not as much as heavy lifting or, physical labor. But again, it still takes time from 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock. It still takes effort. Now, the reason that talking about effort in these two different ways is useful, I found, is because it's relatable to the type of work that we're doing. In that you could be a developer that's not writing huge lines of code, because measuring productivity through lines of code is a bad idea anyway. But you could write 2 lines of code, which is a really complex algorithm, and it's really analytical and it's really cerebral, okay? but it took a certain amount of effort. Or you could be a tester that could be testing functionality across multiple browsers, let's just say. And it's not that it's crazy analytical or super cerebral, but rather it's more arduous. There's a kind of heavy lifting, metaphorically speaking. Different types of effort which can aid the conversation. And one unit of work, or one card, or one artifact, or one user story, or one task, whatever you want, could be made up of effort which is arduous, more heavy lifting, or other work which is analytical and cerebral. This really aids the conversation once we get some language around the different types of effort through a meta. Factors, the two different types of effort, and the additional factor that I introduced would be, well, have we done it before? If we've done something before, it may provide a level of confidence. Of course, context matters, whether it's domain, team, technology, other variables, to allow people to assess the complexity or what it's going to take to go from to do to done. So yeah, this is not a silver bullet by any means. Often debates or discussions or dialogue is not as fruitful when people don't have a shared understanding around words, and estimation is already a very loaded topic in the Agile, Scrum, XP, Kanban community. So introducing two different types of effort, I think, can really aid the conversation. I hope that was useful, and maybe that can make things a bit more smooth in your sprint planning, or just your planning to figure out what it's going to take to get work to done. Thanks for watching.